Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Urban Planning Committee meeting this evening. In recognising the cultural diversity of our great city, I pay my respects to the Indigenous people of Moreland and acknowledge that we meet on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. I offer my respects to the Wurundjeri elders, past and present, to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Members of the gallery, please note the Urban Planning Committee meeting is being recorded and web streamed live to Council's website. The recording will also be available as video on demand. Gallery attendances may be recorded during the meeting. And I'd like to acknowledge Councillor John Kavanagh, who is sitting in the audience this evening, and former Mayor Mark Higginbotham, who's also attending. And councillors in attendance tonight are Councillor Lita Gillies, Councillor Samantha Ratnam, and Councillor Rob Thompson. And officers in attendance tonight are Philip Priest, Group Manager of City Development, Planning Coordinator Darren Camilleri, Planning Coordinator Mark Hughes, Planning Coordinator Robert Shatford, Planning Coordinator Narelle Jennings, Senior Urban Planner Vita Galanti, and Principal Urban Planner Kate McLaren, Governance Officer Saskia Hunter. And do we have any apologies this evening?
Lambros Tapanos, Councillor Tapanos.
Moved by Councillor Gillies, seconded by Councillor Ratnam. And can we have all those in favour?
Yes.
I declare that carried.
And also Councillor Tetty.
He's not on urban planning any longer.
He's sent through via email or someone sent something around. Am I going crazy? He's not a member.
No,
I could be going crazy.
So we'll move on to the adoption of the minutes for the meeting held on the 21st of September. Can I have someone to move the adoption of the minutes? Moved by Councillor Samantha Ratnam, seconded by Councillor Gillies. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And are there any declarations of interest or conflicts of interest to report tonight? No? Okay. We'll now move on, and I'll give a brief introduction of how the Urban Planning Committee will run this evening. The relevant planner will introduce the report and the officer's recommendations. I'll then give any objectors the opportunity to move to the lectern in front of you and give your submission. After this time, the applicant will be given the opportunity to speak. If you are making a submission, please state your name clearly and your address for the record. You're requested to present viewpoints clearly and concisely on why you support or oppose the planning application. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on issues and points not previously raised. If you are opposed to the planning application, please inform the committee why you were opposed and suggest an alternative approach which could satisfy your concerns. Please use this opportunity to focus on your concerns rather than matters of detail in the officer's report. And there's a time frame of 3 minutes for each speaker. So as chairperson, I reserve the right to increase or reduce that time available to any speaker. So now we'll move on to 432 to 436 Bell Street, Pascoe, and I'll pass to the officer to give an outline of the application from here.
Thank you, Councillor Davidson. This proposal is for a 3-storey building containing 11 dwellings, a ground floor shop and ground floor car parking. The aerial image shown on the screen shows the location of the subject site and the site surrounds. The site is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of Bell and Hatter Street in Pascoe Vale South. The subject site is currently zoned Commercial 1 and is affected by the Development Contribution Plan overlay. The site is located within the Bell Melville Neighbourhood Activity Centre. The land is currently developed with 3 attached single-storey shops, and the land immediate to north and west of the subject site is zoned residential growth zone. The ground floor level of the development proposes 165.6 square metres of retail space located to the Bell Street interface, 2 visitor car spaces for the residents, 2 retail car spaces and 12 resident car spaces in the form of car stackers. The first floor comprises 6 apartments in total with 5 proposed 2-bedroom and 1 proposed 1-bedroom apartment. The second floor proposes 5 apartments in total with 3 2-bedrooms and 2 1-bedroom apartments. During the application process, 25 objections were received. It is noted that there were multiple objections from a number of properties. The key concerns raised in the objections include car parking, traffic, the use of car stackers and associated noise, overshadowing, overlooking, neighbourhood character and visual bulk. A consultation meeting was held on the 22nd of August 2015 and attended by 3 objectors. Following the consultation, the applicant provided further advice from a traffic engineer relating to the traffic impact to Bell and Hatter Street. The applicant also accepted conditions set out in the recommendation contained at pages 3 and 6 of the agenda relating to further landscaping on site and the treatment to the ground floor north-facing wall. The report is recommending the issue of a notice of decision to grant a planning permit subject to conditions contained in the recommendation. The key conditions to note are Condition 1A, to show all ground floor exterior walls of the development finished in exposed brick. Condition 3A, to provide screen planting to the ground floor northern boundary provided at a minimum plantation height of 1.8 metres. And Condition 7, that the acoustic report be amended to provide a statement or recommendation that the noise generated from the use of the car stackers will not unreasonably impact the immediate adjoining residential properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any objectors in relation to this application who wish to speak first? Yes, please come forward.
My name is Marilyn Moore and my house is located 1/3 of the way up Hatter Street, away from Bell Street at number 14. I would wish to start off with a preliminary matter concerning the process which was undertaken in the assessment of this application. The Friday morning, the 21st, not 22nd of August meeting was between only 3 objectors, and they were asked by one of the objectors, and there was no community consultation of all of the objectors. There were at least 10 individual objections and 15 pro forma objections, and I think that they were all entitled to be invited to a community consultation. At the moment, I'm not sure whether this would trigger a pulling of this and a deferment, or whether this will go on and be considered, but there is something wrong with the process because the other objectors were not asked to any meeting. Is there a decision going to be made on that?
Yep, what I'll do is I'll pass to Philip Priest. He perhaps can answer that.
So, if to the chair of the committee, if the question is whether tonight, if you made a decision on this application, it would be an invalid decision, then the answer is no. That any decision made tonight, despite whether everybody was invited to the consultation meeting, would still be a valid condition. It's at council's discretion how it undertakes community consultation, and there is no requirement to actually undertake any community consultation in relation to objections that are received. So on this particular occasion, the officers sought to consult with the immediately adjoining neighbours. I understand that the submitter was present at that consultation meeting, but it is quite correct that not every objector was invited to that meeting.
Right. However, if you have concerns in relation to the planning application, would you like to go on and voice those now?
Yes, I would.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My concern is that the proposal is contrary to the urban character of the area and overdevelopment of the site, and does not provide a suitable transition to the residential growth zone to the north. The subject site is on the far western end of the Bell Melville Shopping Centre, a neighbourhood local centre for growth. None of the existing buildings in the centre are higher than 2 stories, and many are single-storey. I believe it is inappropriate to have a 3-storey building in a peripheral location higher than the rest of the centre's buildings. The development adjoining the site are both single-storey and so 2 stories lower than the proposed building. I have a whole set of photographs. May I present them?
Yes, please to pass them around.
It verifies that all the buildings are 2 stories and no higher, and some of them are 1 story. Although the proposed 3-storey development is on a commercial 1-zone site, there is a zone change at the northern boundary to residential growth zone, and there is a dwelling located as close as 1.4 metres north of the commercial 1 zone. The boundary between the zones is the most sensitive residential interface, and council must have regard to the interface with adjoining zones according to the planning scheme. There is no rear lane separating the subject site from the single-storey 1A Hatter Street dwelling, and even its side driveway is to the north, not to the south. 1A Hatter Street is currently separated from the 3 existing Bell Street shops by a wide, at-grade car park with a permeable metal surface. Unfortunately, this proposal is not sympathetic or respectful of the residential amenity of the occupants of the northern dwelling. They will be severely impacted by their house being located only 3 or 4 metres from the proposed 3-storey building. I note that the council report at first states that the Bell Melville Road Neighbourhood Centre is a substantial area for change, and then states its policy supports incremental change. Clause 2201, neighbourhood character of the Moreland planning scheme, clearly states that less intensive change or growth is supported in a neighbourhood activity centre compared to a principal and major centre. Clause 22.013 also states that it is policy to ensure development in neighbourhood and local activity centres is designed to provide a suitable transition at interfaces with adjoining zones. This may include a transition in height and/or suitable landscaping. To provide a suitable transition between the subject site and 1A Hatter Street and better maintain its residential amenity, I propose that the plans be amended to include the deletion of the top northern apartments 6 and 11, and that the building become 2-storey to the rear. Then apartment 7 could be refigured to 2-bedroom. This would also allow the deletion of 1 car stacker from the northeastern corner nearest to the bedroom of 1 Hatter Street, and its reduction by 1/3 of the noise and vibration. It could also provide an opportunity for larger suitably screened balcony areas for apartments 7 and 9. The only proposed landscaping on the site is 1.8 metres high screen planting in a 1.8 metre wide northern easement, as per condition 3A of the NOD. This will not provide an adequate transition between the commercial 1 and the residential growth zone. I question whether the proposal constitutes incremental growth. It proposes to replace the existing three single-storey shops and no dwellings with 1 shop and 11 dwellings. A site coverage of about 54% with a 92% coverage. Permeability of 46% presently with a permeability of 8%. This NOD already contains 29 conditions and 13 alterations to the plans. It is therefore a borderline refusal, and so I trust you would consider refusing it tonight. I am handing over to Mark Higginbotham now, whom the objectors have asked to represent and talk for them on the subject of the proposed car stackers.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your suggestions. They were very well thought out.
Mark Higginbotham of 5/264 Hope Street in West Brunswick. Good evening, councillors. I've been asked to talk about the car stacker. You'll recall that I was involved with the Cummins Street appeal to VCAT, which was successful in relation to the car stacker. I acknowledge this is a different situation, as in the report. You're dealing with a commercial zone 1, and I acknowledge that. I also acknowledge that the car stackers are contained within the building and that there will be noise attenuation in relation to that. I think it's really important in relation to this that we talk about the actual regulation of these particular car stackers and the way that they're used. I note that in the conditions put forward under noise attenuation in number 7, it talks about matters. It talks in terms of should include a statement or recommendation that noise generated from the use of car stackers will not unreasonably impact the immediate adjoining residential properties. Now, that doesn't really... what's unreasonable? It tells us nothing about what it is. So I find that's unacceptable. Also, it talks further down, this is in relation to the acoustic report which was required and has been submitted with this particular application. It also talks in terms of the statement of recommendation must consider whether the use of a concrete wall or better brick will provide noise attenuation properties to prevent unreasonable car stacker noise impacts to the adjacent properties. Once again, this is different to what has already been agreed to. If you look at page 14 of the document, under the use of car stackers and associated noise attenuation, it says in the 3rd paragraph, moreover, during the consultation process, the applicant agreed to the construction of a dual layer wall to assist in limiting any noise generated by the operation of the stackers to the ground floor north-facing wall. The interior wall is to be constructed using either concrete slab or basement brick. The exterior wall is to be constructed using brick. This was agreed to appease any concerns raised by the objectors about the noise. These changes will be secured via condition to the recommendation. That's not what's in the recommendation. So I go back to the question of where we're at in terms of 7. I have prepared and submitted an amendment to the way that the recommendation is done, and I've provided the councillors with a copy of that particular recommendation. I'll read it out and then I'll explain the reasons why, if I may. It says, prior to the endorsement of plans, the acoustic report prepared by Acoustical Advisory and Consulting Services dated the 1st of May 2015 must be amended by a suitably qualified acoustic engineer or equivalent to include 1. A statement of recommendation that noise generated from the use of car stackers will meet the noise level requirements both internally and externally under the following standard, regulations, noise notes, State Environment Protection Policy and the EPA Act. These requirements will apply to the immediate adjoining residential properties of 1A, 2A, 2B, 2C and 2 Hatter Street, Pascoe Vale South, and the residential apartments within the development. AS 2107-2000 acoustics, recommended design, sound levels and reverberation times for building interiors. Environmental protection, in brackets, residential noise regulation 2008, SR number 121/2008, EPA regulations 1254, noise control guidelines and the environment protection, in brackets, residential noise regulation 2008, appendix 4, page 2. State Environment Protection Policy, in brackets, control of noise from commerce, industry and trade, number N1, in brackets, SEP N-1, Section 48A of the Environment Protection Act 1970. 2. The statement or recommendation must state the dual walls are to be constructed on the ground floor to limit any noise generated by the operation of the car stackers. The interior wall is to be constructed of either a concrete slab, Besser brick or other solid material with the same acoustic equivalent rating. The exterior wall is to be constructed of brick. This will provide noise attenuation properties to prevent car stacker noise impacting on nearby residents as listed and the residential apartments within the development. The rest is already in the thing. My reason for doing this is that you've got to have something to measure the noise of the stackers with. I've provided, and these are the things that we've argued at VCAT. In that situation, it was a residential situation, it was most probably applicable that there was nothing that would cover it, except perhaps the EPA Act and some of the noise regulations. In this particular case, definitely they do apply in terms of certainly the SEP N1, because it relates to noise from commerce, industry and trade. This is a commercial zone. It's applicable. In terms of AS 2007-2000, it's been referred to in the acoustic report in relation to the external double glazing and that thing and all that side of it. But there's also part within the AS 2007-2000, which talks about internal noise. That's not been referred to in this report. But if you look at the standard, it talks about internal noise. The residents have a right to make sure that they're having their requirements met as well. It's in the standard. It's there. In terms of the others, the EPA, the noise notes and what have you, it talks about that. It talks in general terms of having something which is the maximum should be 5 decibels above the normal time the normal level of noise applicable and on the site. And that can be measured either during the day, at night or whatever. It's got to apply. And there are certain requirements about it. All we're seeking is that that the regulations be and acts and what have you be applied in this matter to make sure that it complies. The other thing which is important here is that when you put in place something like these stackers, you've got to have some sort of maintenance agreement. So I suggest that there should be a note put at the end of the report that the owners corporation has a maintenance agreement to make sure that there's appropriate maintenance carried out on these car stackers at least once a year. I think that pretty well covers. As I've said, I don't like car stackers, but this may well be a site where they could certainly be considered. They've certainly been used in Nicholson Street for this purpose, and they've been used at other sites. This is a commercial site. It's not residential, it's commercial. You could argue that it's obviously been argued and talked about in terms of neighbourhood character. Look, you could knock the whole top floor off this and you wouldn't have to have any car stackers. But I know that it would be a bridge too far and you'd have to knock it out just on that basis alone. So clearly they've come up with something else. But that's what I propose is the way to handle this in terms of car stackers in this particular site. My concerns about use of residential car stackers in residential areas have not changed. There is not an appropriate regulation which covers it at the moment, and we need to address that problem.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Mark.
Mark, before you leave, could I ask a question of you? The successful VCAT hearing that you had, can you remember the brand of car stacker that was had been proposed for that particular site?
If you give me half a moment.
You can come back to me. Question on notice, if you like.
Now, if I can tell you what it was. This is a different type of car stacker.
It is,
Right.
yeah.
This is not a multiple layer. This is an up and down
one.
2x2. It's a different car stacker. I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question,
Does.
Councillor?
Thank you.
At this point, I'd ask, is there a representative for the applicant present in relation to this application?
Yeah.
Yes. It might be worthwhile if, Mark, could you please pass a copy to the applicant so that he can have a look at the condition, because we may ask his opinion on it later.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Good evening and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Paula Brosnan and I live at 2A Hatter Street, directly opposite the site of the new development. I share all the concerns raised by my fellow objectors and have some additional issues to highlight. We've just heard from Mark Higginbotham in relation to car stackers. I have an added concern regarding the issue, which relates to the noise that will be emitted from the permeable and perforated roller door. I submit that noise emissions be prioritised above minor aesthetic considerations and that the design of this door be altered with highest regard for stacker noise emissions. Another key concern relates to street parking. Parking is already at a minimum in Hatter Street, and with no additional street parking or loading zone proposed for the residents of the property's 11 new apartments, their visitors, new shop proprietors, customers of the new shop and delivery drivers offloading, congestion at this location is an absolute certainty. Added to this is the enduring inattention to enforcement of parking regulations in the area. Cars without permits are currently able to park for days in 1 hour parking areas without consequence. There is a serious need for parking enforcement in Hatter Street, which could be partially mitigated by the implementation of electronic monitoring from Bell Street north to at least West Garth Street. The effect of this development on local traffic is another major concern of mine, particularly the impact of additional vehicles turning left from Hatter Street into Bell Street. Every weekday morning I make this turn, hoping that vehicles travelling east in Bell Street comply with the Keep Clear road markings, enabling me to enter the intersection and arrive at the train station on time. This is just as likely to not occur as it is to occur. Not occurring means waiting some minutes for the next traffic light cycle at Melville Road and again relying on east travelling Bell Street vehicles to give way. When queued behind other vehicles in Hatter Street, executing this turn can take many minutes. I request that Council implement measures to ensure that Hatter Street traffic is not further disadvantaged upon the completion and occupation of this new development. One such measure could involve extending the intersection's clearance area some metres east of the intersection to allow more than one vehicle to exit Hatter Street per traffic light cycle. And finally, I refer to the issue of waste management. I note the inclusion of a total 11 bins on the ground floor plan diagram. However, the on-site space taken up by these bins appears to be greater than the footpath space, begging the question as to where the bins will be placed for collection. I further submit that the collection of waste, particularly retail waste, be it by council or private contractor, be undertaken at predetermined days between the hours of 10 a.m. and 4 p.m, so as to reduce the impact of resultant noise on nearby residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Kiriakou. My family and I have run Living Flowers out of the Moreland City Council area for the last 20 years. We're currently occupying the site opposite it at 430 Bell Street. However, previously we occupied 432 Bell Street for the better part of 15 years, which is the proposed development site, of course. So I guess I've got an intimate understanding of the area, particularly when it comes to a retail business perspective, and I'd like to share some of those things with you all. I guess I've got two major concerns about the proposed development of 432 to 436 Bell Street, parking and its impact on the area, of course, and the potential impact on my business through construction period and beyond, particularly when it comes to our busy times. In relation to parking, again, being there 20 years, since the council eliminated parking on Bell Street for potential customers, we noticed a substantial financial drop-off in those years directly after the parking was reduced or removed from Bell Street. We've readjusted our business to work, within those parameters and understand the reasoning why it was taken off Bell Street, traffic congestion and so forth. It's pretty logical, but it did have a large financial impact on our business. Since then, we've heavily relied on two 10-minute car parks, which are on Hatter Street, right where the development side is, on 432, directly opposite where our shop is now. In fact, those two car parks probably account for 80% to 100% of our customers, because most of the traffic now flows down Bell Street east and turns left into Hatter and parks in one of those two stops for a couple of minutes, pick their flowers up and go. So it's very important to us. I noticed, and I believe in the proposed plans for the development of 432, the car spaces, I think, are lost to a driveway to accommodate residents coming in and out of the proposed development. The impact of that type of thing would be catastrophic to our business, because there is actually nowhere else to park for our customers. There's two spots at the rear of our premises, and that's basically staff parking. And then there's a couple of spots in front of the townhouses, which are largely occupied by residents. So I can't even, exemplify how catastrophic that'd be for us if we lost those two car parks. Compounding the issue is that it looks like to me that with the proposal of the development, that the requirements for minimum car spaces are barely being met. So there's a retail premises there, there's all the residential premises, yet the car spaces don't sort of match what's happening there. And I guess, to pose a further question, and an open question at that, what new potential business moving into 432 to 436 would want a space where there's very limited access for their customers to park? It would pose problems. Like if I was potentially looking at moving back in there and there's no car parking, I'd go, No, it's probably not going to happen because there's nowhere for anybody to park. So it'd probably make it nearly impossible to lease that building out based on those grounds. And it's been unoccupied now for 3 years since we vacated it. So, you know, it's probably a lot to do with the state of the building, but car parking wouldn't help that issue. The other concern I had was the potential impact through construction and beyond construction. And I guess what I mean by that, should construction go ahead, we are at a severe risk of our business being restricted, particularly through our busy times, which are Christmas, Valentine's Day, Easter, Mother's Day, and because of the cultural diversity in the area, end of Ramadan's really busy for us too. Now, should construction go on through these periods and Hatter Street is blocked, it's a catastrophe for us because all the customers need to turn in there to park. Through normal weeks, it'll be hard. Through busy periods, just not doable by us, and it would be really, really difficult for the business to survive. As an example, recently there were gasworks that took place down Bell Street. The consultation on behalf of Ausworks and Zimfra, the company that did it, was really poor. They proposed certain times. They blew out for whatever reason. There was no further consultation, and they begun commencement on the work over Easter weekend without consulting us. It's now sitting in court because we suffered substantial loss that weekend and with no consultation about what was happening. On the flip side, the electric companies were doing line maintenance through February, which is our busiest time, Valentine's Day. They sent a letter out. I called them and said, hey, it's going to be really hard for us. We negotiated and they proposed an alternate power source for us that weekend. So I guess what I'm trying to highlight here is with a bit of consultation and discussion about it, it could be a win-win. But, you know, if it's like the Zimfra situation where they just bore ahead and do things, then it could have impact on businesses, and it's pretty bad for us if that happens.
I am conscious of the time, so...
Sure, yep. And I guess, you know, in closing, I don't overtly oppose to the construction. More so, I have issues with the aforementioned, and I'd like them to be considered and dealt with prior to construction taking place, that being those car parks addressed, and perhaps, you know, consultation about when and how construction happens, and maybe avoiding those busy times for us and ease some of the load for us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for that perspective.
Can I ask a question or two? Sorry.
Yes.
The florist shop has moved across the street?
It is now at 430 Bell Street.
So still on the north side, or I'm just still on the north side, isn't it? Have you got parking at the rear of the...
There are two spots there, but like I said, with one staff member, and there's also a property upstairs. It's a massage place. By the time they park there and we park there, there is no additional spot left for customers. Is that all?
I've got some further questions around the car parking, but we might do that at the end
Yes.
with a number of questions, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there another objector?
How are you all?
Good evening.
Good. My name is Wally Abrahams and I live at 1A Hatter Street, and my home is a adjoining property to the north of the property at 432-438 Bell Street. I live in a single-storey timber home, not a brick home as stated in the council report. My concerns about the proposal development includes noise, overlooking and streetcar parking. With the noise, I'm concerned about the 12 car stackers that will be located only 4.3 metres from the southern timber wall of my bedroom at 1A Hatter Street. They will be located only 2.23 metres from my third southern capital room windows. In the NOD conditions 1 and 7, and there is no mention of a double northern brick or either concrete slab or Besser brick or brick, which is mentioned as being agreed to during the consultation on page 14 of the council report. I note that condition 7 does not set a standard against which the noise from the car stackers can be measured. I want an appropriate standard included in the condition. I'm very worried that in the quiet early hours in the morning, apartment occupants could arrive home, open the garage door and activate the car stackers, creating noise and vibration, which will wake up myself and my family. If this occurs more than 2 times a night, this could disrupt our sleeping pattern and our health. Noise from the air conditioners. The plans do not include the location of the air conditioning units. Now, condition 1E of the NOD requires the location of the air conditioning units and other plant equipment to be marked on the plan. I do not want the air conditioning units on the northern side of the roof, on the northern balconies, or on the northern easement. I want an agreement to the NOD to specify their location near the proposed lift well. And as regards to overlooking, the balconies of apartments 6 and 11 will overlook my northern property. The screens will be only 1.6 by 1 metre high. I do not agree with this. I want a condition 1 amendment to include 1.7 metre high opaque screens to the balconies of these 2 apartments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We do have a video of a car stacker of a similar model if this application is to be approved. It may be worthwhile viewing that video at some point this evening. I don't know if councillors want to view it now or... yeah, okay. We'll continue with the objectors and then at the end of everybody's objections we'll have a look at the video. Is there a further objector who wishes to speak? Yes?
Good evening, committee. My name's Clinton Fry. I live at 18 Hatter Street. I have various objections or fears about the proposed development, which I find this evening have already been quite well canvassed by other objectors. So instead of giving you chapter and verse on what my problems are, just very quickly a couple of slightly different perspectives on problems that may arise from the use of car stackers and the probability of further congestion in parking. First things that occurred to me about car stackers, from a position of relative ignorance about their operation, is that the idea of lifts for cars surely means that the operation of getting in, getting out of a car space when using car stacker is going to be fairly slow compared to just jumping in your car and going, which we're all used to. At busy times of, especially the morning, when people presumably are off for work, they might have, a few of them have 9 o'clock work deadlines, things like that, there's going to be heavy pressure, you would think, on the use of those stackers, right? Everybody wants to be there at once. If it happens that the use of these stackers means a slow and frustrating process, I can well imagine that residents of the proposed units are going to seek alternatives. The alternatives they're likely to seek are obviously on-street parking. That if they do that, the on-street parking they're searching for up and down Hatter Street and possibly even in nearby side streets is simply going to add to the existing problem of on-street parking contributing to traffic congestion in our area. I've been living in Hatter Street for 15 years or so. In that time, there's been quite a significant increase in on-street parking, and I have noticed that it goes together with a corresponding increase in traffic congestion because cars on either side of the road, one lane through the middle, people are waiting. It really makes it quite difficult. This development, without, I think, besides the car stacking, without possibly sufficient provision for on-site parking, is going to simply force staff, customers, visitors to residents onto nearby streets to seek on-street parking in the absence of appropriate on-site parking being planned. It is going to, could significantly deteriorate the amenity of our area by the increase in traffic congestion. That is about, well, I have to say, because if I go on, I will be simply reiterating what other worthy objectors have had to talk to you about. Oh, one more thing too. Sorry, I won't be long. I was one of the objectors who did not receive an invitation to a community consultation meeting. I had no idea that it was on till it was over. It seems to me, knowing very little about formal council matters, it seems very counterintuitive that a person with an expressed interest in a project would not then be invited to participate further in discussion around that project. Very odd indeed. So maybe something for council to think about with their procedures in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wally. Is there another objector who wishes to speak? No further objectors. Is there a representative for the applicant present? Yes, please come forward.
Thank you. My name's Danny Hasey. I'm a town planner from David Locke Associates, and I'm representing the permit applicant. I was also at the consultation meeting with the nearest neighbours, and we sought to address all of the concerns at that meeting. I'm going to try and cover everything that's been raised, but I might miss things as I go along. So you can always ask me questions afterwards. So from what I've heard, key issues that are outstanding are building height and bulk, overlooking, car parking and traffic, noise from the car stackers, waste management, and impacts during construction. One of the other issues that we tried to deal with at that consultation meeting was treatment along the northern boundary of the northern wall and landscaping. So for the first one, in terms of building height and bulk, the building's located in a commercial 1 zone. It's got a residential growth zone to the north and also to the western boundary. Now in both of these zones, housing growth is encouraged in buildings of up to 4 storeys. Proposed development is only 3 storeys. Along the northern boundary, the building's set back to provide landscaping. It's strictly in accordance with Res Code Standard B17, which would apply to a normal residential development, and that meeting that standard, it essentially ensures that visual bulk impacts are dealt with to that northern neighbour, in addition to that landscaping as well. To the west, the building similarly set back where it's directly adjacent to the rear yard of the residential neighbours. In terms of overlooking, the apartments have been designed primarily to face Bell Street and Hatter Street. That was intentional to provide outlook for those apartments and also minimise the potential for direct overlooking to neighbours. So where there is potential for overlooking though, they've included screens and planters in accordance with the typical Res Code standard. There was an issue during the assessment by the council officers where they were concerned about not enough outlook to one of the apartments that were facing north. So there was some cross-section analysis done to ensure that there was outlook maintained while preventing views down into the neighbouring site to the north. In terms of the car parking and traffic, so car parking, there's been 12 car spaces provided for 11 dwellings and 2 visitor spaces for the dwellings. That's in accordance with car parking requirements in the planning scheme. It's actually 1 additional residential space than what's required. In terms of the retail space, that's provided with 2 car spaces. So there's a reduction of 4 car parking spaces sought. But the existing shop on the site had a shortfall of 6 spaces. So there's an improvement of that existing shortfall by 2 spaces. So overall, there's an improvement in car parking provision. That car parking analysis has been undertaken by expert traffic advice, which was included with the application, and council's own traffic engineers have looked at that information and have no issue with it. In response to the issues that were raised at the consultation meeting, there were further traffic assessments done by by the applicant's traffic engineers. That included some intersection analysis at the corner of Bell Street and Hatter Street, and that confirmed that the traffic generated by the development can be safely accommodated on Hatter Street and wouldn't create any unsafe condition on the Bell Street corner. They also looked at queuing for the stackers, and they confirmed that there would be no queuing out onto the road that would cause any difficulty or safety issues on Hatter Street. In terms of the noise from the stackers, the applicants agreed to a permit condition to include that noise attenuation to the car park walls to prevent noise impact. So that's that condition 7 that has been talked about. Essentially, condition 7 asks that the acoustic consultant be engaged to determine what needs to be done in terms of noise attenuation, and they would have regard to the relevant standards. I know there's an alternative condition that's been put to you by one of the objectors. I've reviewed it, but to be honest, I don't know whether it would be right or not, because I'm just a planner, I'm not an acoustic consultant, and I don't think any of us probably know. So I think from my perspective, and this is what's done in numerous different developments all over Melbourne, is to really rely on the experts' advice in terms of noise mitigation. There's another check in that as well, in that it needs to be submitted to council for endorsement anyway. So if council wants to get their own acoustic consultant to assess that acoustic report to determine that it's correct, then that's another sort of check and balance in terms of the noise. And having said that, there are a lot of these car stacking systems which are within buildings all over Melbourne, metropolitan Melbourne, that operate without any issue whatsoever. In terms of treatment to the northern boundary, what we've done there is agreed to a different type of landscaping that was originally proposed. So they're either lily-pillies or capital pear trees, which will provide more of a substantial screen to the northern interface with the residential development, and details of that are in condition 3 of the recommendation. And also the ground floor of the building has been changed by that same condition. Actually not that condition, but another one, to a more domestic sort of face brick material. So there's a bit better integration with the residential development to the north. In terms of waste management, there was a waste management plan that was provided with the proposal, and that's been accepted by council staff as being reasonable. Construction impacts, there'll be a construction management plan which will be required to be submitted and endorsed by the council. The applicant's open to organising consultation well in advance of any sort of construction commencing, and happy to have an open dialogue with neighbours throughout that construction process, and that was something which was confirmed in the consultation meeting that we had here at the council as well.
Annie, I am conscious of the time, so there may be questions from councillors in relation to the application that you may need to answer.
Is that me? I just coughed.
Sorry about that, everybody.
That's okay, it's gone now.
So I think we might turn to councillors now. There may be some questions that you can answer. Are there any questions from councillors?
I have some questions from officers. Perhaps the applicant also can answer them, but he might want to be seated. But I'll go to the officers first, but I'm happy for others who might want to speak to the applicant first to go first.
Do any councillors have any questions for the applicant?
No, not really, not.
Okay, we may come back to that. Questions from councillors to the officers? Councillor Ratner?
Thanks very much to all the objectors who've raised a number of quite serious considerations that we should take into account tonight. Just some questions of officers regarding a number of things that were brought up. Number one, the air conditioning units and the screening, some concerns around that. Just like to know what we have proposed in terms of, or whether we share those concerns, or officers share those concerns about the noise levels generated from the air conditioning units, and whether the screening has met the minimum requirement. And the other one is just I wanted to resolve the car parking issue, and just I wouldn't mind a pictorial explanation of the potential loss of car parks and the impact on the business.
Okay. I'm happy to take the question in relation to the cleaning of the air conditioners. Yep. And condition 1, find the actual condition, councillors. Condition 1, thank you. Condition 1A is a standard condition that goes on many apartment developments. What that condition seeks to provide is, because the air conditioning layout hasn't usually been fully resolved at the time that planning permit's been issued, it provides a mechanism whereby we can see that at the time that plans are to be endorsed and a building permit's to be issued. So that allows us to have some consideration of the location and the siting, and moreover really the visibility of what the plant, equipment and air conditioning impact may be. Doesn't specifically require the acoustic treatment as part of that, or seek to do that. So it's more a visual architectural outcome that's being sought.
In relation to noise at the moment, I think it might be a good opportunity to play the video. Right. If we could organise that. And just give a brief description. So this is a video of a car stacker that's a similar model. I'm not sure if it's the same or similar model to the one that's being proposed here. So the noise elimination from that would be of a similar standard, I believe.
Yes, through the chair, once again, I understand it's the same model as is proposed in these plans, and it exists on a site in Bree Street in Brunswick.
Well, that's quiet.
That's a good thing.
They found
And it's going to take a long time to get into the car, but
Double put the sound on with that.
Yep. Oh.
That worked well. Excellent.
Okay.
No, they're working through it in the IT area to get the sound work. So it's not vision.
No, of course not. No. Yes.
Speeds it up.
There's noise.
that's the reference with which to understand no idea.
Going to generate more.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to further questions from
So
councillors.
just the screening one to follow up. The screening and car parking I had as well. Yeah. So just, I think I've resolved, I've understood the screening one, but I'm happy for you to go through it.
Mark, did you want to talk to the car parking question, and maybe perhaps if you repeat the question?
Sure. So just with the car parking, I wouldn't mind, there we go, a pictorial representation of which car parks are going to be lost as a result of the development. And I'm particularly thinking about the impact of the business at 4:30.
So, okay, with respect to the vehicle crossing, if I can grab the mouse, I might try and. Can you get me back? So that hashing represents a proposed new vehicle crossing. There is the existing crossing which is to be removed. I understand that you can't park from there to there to the intersection because there's a road rule that you can't park that close to an intersection. In between that crossing and the crossing to the property further north, there's the availability of 2 car spaces. On my analysis, there's no net loss of car parking with the change.
The other direction. It's actually the other direction, closer to the curb. So where the crossing is, the existing crossing.
Where the existing car parking is.
Right where your pointer is there, that's where the existing car parks are.
That's where the crossing is for the development? can see that that's where you're entering into the development. And then
You're saying?
that's the new
It's
crossing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's where the existing car parks are.
Yes, so
Yeah,
you're
that's what I'm
using that.
saying.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing. And then up here, that's where the existing crossing has to be removed, and that becomes car parking. So what I'm saying is no, that loss, it's just in different spots.
Will it still be 2 spots? Or?
Yeah.
There'll be 2 spots.
I didn't have a picture of florist collection only or something on those ones.
That'd be really nice.
Excuse me, those 2 spots be south of my fence line, because I got the house right next door, and those 2 parking spots will they be...
The first spot will be
They won't be in front of my home?
well, the first spot will be located in front of the subject site. The second spot will be located in front of your home.
In front of my home?
Yes.
Well, that's
Are there any
maybe
further questions from councillors to the applicant?
Just to clarify, but that's still no net loss of car parking spaces, but in terms of the impact on this gentleman's residence, is it impacting the current availability of car space in front of his house?
There'll be more parking available in front of him. At the moment, there's probably 1 spot available in his house. With this proposal, there'll be 2 spots available in front of his house or near his house.
Which will be used by the business as well? Okay,
Whoever
potentially.
can legally park there.
Will they only be 10-minute spaces though? That's the question.
Don't know if there's restrictions.
Yes, there are.
Excuse me, I got the no standing signs in front of my home put there because...
Okay, there's no further discussion at this point from the gallery. Sorry, we'll have a discussion ourselves. Okay.
Sorry. My question was, are they going to both the car spots in front of this gentleman's home, are they going to be the 10-minute car parks? Because obviously that will impact on people who want to maybe go and visit him even. Because I don't know many people who stop in for a cup of coffee and actually stay 10 minutes.
They don't, do they? They don't.
Perhaps I could add to the discussion, councillors, the impact in relation to the property immediately to the north is at the moment there is on-street car parking in front of your property, and following this development there will be that same area for on-street car parking in front of your property. So there's no change at all. As part of the consideration of this planning permit application, the decision and the conditioning of the approval is restricted to the actual development proposal and not the on-street car parking arrangements. So if there are proposals following the completion of the development, if it goes ahead, then there are submissions that could be made to council to look at alternative car parking arrangements, on-street restrictions, if that's deemed necessary at that particular time.
The only reason I asked that, sorry, through the chair, is that we've just heard that the florist has been impacted negatively anyway by the parking being removed from Bell Street and understands why. But he relies very heavily on 2 10-minute car spots. And if they're not 10-minute car spots there to access, then he will lose business because people will park there and they might park there all day or they might park there for an hour. So there's no turnover of people and cars. So that's an issue for him. So that's why I'm asking that question specifically.
Yeah. No, I'll just understand that the advice back in terms of this planning permit decision is that changes to the on-street restrictions and whether a 10-minute spot is moved slightly further up the street or further down the street or additional 10-minute spots are provided is something that can be considered separately through council through a request at the time if this development proceeds. Yeah.
Councillor Gillies, do you have any further questions?
I do actually. In terms of the car stacker, and Mr. Higginbotham's proposal here, in terms of soundproofing, we've got a roller door and we've got that the car stacker, all of which they do make noise. So have we sought, because I can't see anything that seeks to really soundproof that area as much as possible.
Is that what condition 7's about then? Condition 7 is designed to undertake that acoustic testing and that recommendations.
So yeah, part of our thing. So they will have to come back to council with something. Will that Okay.
So if I can try to assist, former councillor Higginsbotham has pointed out in his submission that there are no specific EPA regulations or controls in relation to car stackers that we could specifically condition. The Condition 7, as included in the officer recommendation in the agenda, seeks to rely on a qualified acoustic engineer to make an assessment about the acoustic treatment and whether that's acceptable or not, and doesn't reference any particular standard because there isn't one.
This actually limits us in that this is the recommendation from a recommendation, whereas the acoustic engineer would come in to actually put further restrictions on them and insulate the walls, or as one of the residents said, put a thicker door on or something like that. So I think, asking for an independent assessment is going to give.
I don't disagree with that, but then are we, through the chair, is there an assumption that the applicant is, if there's no particular standard, is he committed to that?
Yeah, well, it says we're submitted and approved to the satisfaction of the responsible authority, being us. The amended acoustic report will be endorsed to form part of the permit. So if they come back and say we want a foot thick door on the front and we want insulation in all the walls because this is going to be the noisiest thing you've ever come across, then that would...
No, I understand that.
But no?
I understand what you're saying. I just... Fine.
I like this, Mark, but I'm more concerned that if we put this on it, that it doesn't go a step far enough.
Perhaps a short adjournment might be warranted and we can have a quick discussion. All those in favour? Moved by councillor Ratnam, seconded by councillor Gillies. All those in favour? Okay, we're just going to have a quick adjournment to discuss this further.